When you pull back, when you step into silence, people often assume you're trying to punish them. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Stepping back, choosing silence, it's not about being manipulative. It's about reclaiming your peace. It's about preserving your dignity. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is absolutely nothing. You see, silence gets misinterpreted all the time, especially in relationships. When someone goes quiet, the other person starts wondering, are they angry? Are they playing games? Asterisk. But what they're not asking is that did I take something for granted? Because that's what silence often signals, not spite, not revenge, but self-worth. When someone's energy has been constantly poured into another person through texts, through calls, through constant efforts to fix, to explain, to be understood, and they receive little back, the silence that follows isn't coldness, it's exhaustion, it's a boundary, it's finally realizing that the more noise you make trying to be seen, the more invisible you start to feel. And in that realization, you find your voice not in the noise, but in the quiet. There's a dignity in silence, a strength, because it takes a lot of self-control to not respond to things that don't deserve your energy anymore. It takes maturity to understand that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, and that walking away doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise enough to know that peace is better than being right. And when you step back, what happens? People notice, because your presence was never loud to begin with. It was valuable. And people may not always notice value when it's constantly there, but they notice when it's gone. When you're no longer available to be the emotional cushion, the one always reaching out, the one always initiating, your absence starts to speak volumes. This isn't about creating a reaction. It's about no longer chasing one. You've spent so much time trying to get someone to care, to reciprocate, to show up. But if someone doesn't hear you when you're speaking your truth, maybe they'll finally listen when your silence replaces your words. Maybe, in that stillness, they'll hear everything you were trying to say all along. We tend to think that more effort leads to more connection, that if we just say it the right way, show them enough, remind them enough of what they're losing, they'll finally see it. But there's a truth no one tells you. Sometimes the effort only tells the other person they don't have to try, because you're doing all the work for both of you. And in doing so, you're teaching them that they don't have to earn your presence. It's guaranteed. So when you finally stop, when you stop showing up in the same way, when you stop trying to fix what's broken by yourself, you're not withdrawing love. You're shifting it from them back to you. You're no longer fighting to prove your worth to someone who didn't recognize it. You're allowing the silence to speak a language they never learned to hear, the language of absence, of consequence, of reflection. That silence, it's a mirror, and it gives the other person a rare opportunity to actually see themselves, to see the gap left behind, to see what they ignored, dismissed, or overlooked. But they can't see that if you keep filling the space, if you keep explaining yourself, if you keep handing over your energy without return. So don't be afraid to step back. Don't feel guilty for going quiet. You're not punishing anyone. You're protecting yourself. You're conserving energy that was being drained in the wrong direction. And if someone truly values you, they will feel it. They will notice the absence of your light. They will feel the shift when your energy no longer surrounds them like it used to. You don't need to slam doors. You don't need to make dramatic exits. You simply stop investing where there's no return. You simply go still. And in that stillness, the ones who truly cared, or maybe just realized too late, that they should have begin to wake up. They start to wonder where you went, what changed, why the dynamic feels different. They may reach out, they may beg for your attention again. They may suddenly show up with the energy you once begged them for. But here's the key. Your silence wasn't meant to lure them back. It was meant to bring you back to your center, to your worth, to your clarity. Because the point was never to make them chase you. The point was to stop chasing someone who wouldn't even turn around. And when you choose silence from a place of strength, rather than spite, it becomes magnetic. It draws the truth out of people. It reveals intentions. It separates those who were just comfortable from those who truly care. So step back, go silent, not because you want them to beg, but because you finally stopped begging. And in doing so, you made space for someone, whether it's them or someone else, to finally see your value without you having to scream for it. Let your silence be the loudest message you ever send. You know, one of the hardest things to accept, especially when you care deeply about someone, is that they may not appreciate you in the moment. Not fully. Not while you're right there, always available, always showing up, always giving. And it's frustrating, isn't it? Because you think, I'm doing everything right, I'm being kind, I'm being supportive, I'm consistent. Isn't that what people want? But here's the truth, most people don't talk about. People don't always value what's right in front of them. It's not because they're evil or manipulative. It's just human nature. We become accustomed to what's always there. We start expecting it. And when something is always within reach, it's easy to forget how special it is. That's why stepping back is sometimes the most powerful move you can make. Because when someone doesn't feel the cost of your absence, they'll never understand the value of your presence. And I get it. You don't want to step back. You don't want to go silent. Every instinct inside of you screams, fix it, try harder, make them see. But here's where the shift happens. Trying harder isn't always the solution. Sometimes the real strength is in restraint, the courage to pause, the discipline to create space. Think about this. Have you ever lost something, your phone, your wallet, maybe even your keys, and only then realized how essential it was to your daily life? You didn't think about it much when it was there. You took it for granted because it was always within reach. But the moment it was gone, your entire focus shifted. That's what your absence can do when it's paired with silence. It interrupts their pattern. It wakes them up. The space you create when you step back, it becomes a mirror. Suddenly the other person has to sit with themselves. Without your energy there to fill the silence, they have to reflect. And in that reflection, they may start to see what you were truly bringing to the table. Not just the support, not just the affection, but the consistency, the emotional safety, the presence. They see what's missing, and if they truly care, they'll begin to question why they ever treated it like it was optional. But this only works when your silence comes from strength, not spite. You're not stepping back to manipulate. You're not staying silent to punish. You're doing it because you've recognized that your presence was being mishandled, and you're no longer available for that treatment. You've decided that your self-worth isn't tied to someone else's recognition of it. Now, when you do this, two things can happen. One, they realize what they've lost, and they come back with genuine clarity. Two, they don't, and they fade out. Either way, you win. Because if someone can walk away and never feel the need to reach out again, it wasn't real. They weren't invested the way you were. And you've just been spared from pouring yourself into a one-sided connection. But if they do come back, and often they do, it's not because you chased, begged, or convinced them. It's because they felt the loss. They had to experience the silence. And in that silence, they had time to remember who you are. You see, we live in a world where people are bombarded with options and distractions. But the one thing that cuts through all of that is presence followed by absence. When someone truly valuable steps back, it echoes, it's felt, it lingers, and it makes people pay attention in a way that words never could. And here's the really beautiful part. You're not doing this for them. You're not waiting for them to beg. That's not the goal. You're doing it for you because you deserve to be valued without having to prove yourself. You deserve reciprocity without forcing it. You deserve peace without constantly earning it. So when you step back, stay grounded, stay focused on yourself, let the silence speak. Let them wrestle with the emptiness that only your presence used to fill. And if they come back, let it be because they chose you clearly, consciously, and with respect. Because people value what they fear losing. And if they don't, you just made room for someone who will. When you're constantly chasing someone, when you're always the one initiating, explaining, and over-communicating, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are. It creates an energy of imbalance. It sends the message, whether you realize it or not, that you're seeking approval, that you're trying to convince someone to value you, instead of simply being someone who is valuable. We live in a world where we're conditioned to believe that expressing everything we feel all the time is a sign of authenticity. And yes, communication is important, but there's a fine line between being open and being desperate. There's a point where constant explaining stops being clarity and starts becoming insecurity in disguise. Neediness repels, not because people are cruel or heartless, but because something inside us pulls away when we sense someone placing their self-worth in our hands. It's too much pressure, and frankly, it's not attractive. But you know what is? Someone who knows when to hold back. Someone who's okay with the silence. Someone who isn't afraid to say something just to fill the space. That's where the mystery lives. Not the game-playing kind of mystery. Not manipulation. I'm talking about the confidence to let someone wonder what you're thinking, what you're feeling, because you're not rushing to explain it all. That's the energy of someone who values themselves enough to let others do the work to discover them. And that's rare, that's magnetic. Most people overexpress because they're trying to manage how others perceive them. They're scared that if they don't clarify every little thing, they'll be misunderstood, or worse, forgotten. But here's the truth. If someone really values you, they'll be curious about you. They'll lean in to understand. You won't have to spoon-feed them your worth. You won't have to campaign for your place in their life. When you step back and choose silence, especially after showing up so much for someone, it creates contrast. It forces them to look at what's changed. And that contrast can be the most powerful wake-up call. Suddenly, the person who always had access to your time, your thoughts, your energy, doesn't. And that absence speaks volumes. Think about how many times you've sent that long message just to be met with a cold, okay. How many times you tried to fix things with words, pouring yourself out in hopes that it would make them care more. And how many times did that actually work? Rarely. Because the truth is, when you have to convince someone to care, you've already lost your power. Now imagine doing the opposite. Imagine not sending the follow-up text, not explaining yourself again, not asking, are we okay, or did I do something wrong? You just step back, quietly, not out of spite, not to punish, but because you finally realized that if someone doesn't already see your value, you saying it louder won't help. That's where real strength is, in knowing that you are enough without needing constant confirmation. In letting your silence do the talking when your words no longer feel heard. Mystery doesn't mean being distant or unavailable. It means being grounded. It means having boundaries. It means you're not throwing your emotional life on the table for someone who's barely paying attention. You show up, yes, but you also pull back when your presence isn't being met with the appreciation it deserves. And here's the beautiful thing. When you carry yourself this way, people notice. They may not say it out loud at first, but they feel it. It shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, they're wondering what you're thinking. They're checking their phone a little more. They're remembering the way you made them feel when you were fully present. And now, they miss it. They may not beg right away, but they will feel it. They will feel your absence echo louder than any words could. Because what's rare gets remembered. What's strong gets respected. And what's silent, when it comes from a place of self-worth, gets heard the loudest. So don't rush to explain yourself. Don't overextend just to keep someone's attention. Be still, be grounded, let them come to you. Because when you stop chasing, you give them the chance to feel what it's like to lose you. You know, I used to believe that the most powerful way to get through to someone was to explain myself over and over again. To be clear, to be kind, to try and be understood. And don't get me wrong, communication is beautiful, it's essential. But here's something we rarely talk about. Sometimes, walking away is louder than any words you could ever say. There comes a point where you've said all there is to say. You've expressed how you feel. You've given them the benefit of the doubt. You've waited for them to step up, to meet you halfway. And yet, nothing changes. That's when you realize it's no longer about what you're saying. It's about what they're not doing. And no amount of words can change someone who isn't ready to listen. That's the moment where the real shift happens. Not in the yelling, not in the pleading, but in the decision to walk away, not angrily, not bitterly, just silently. Because silence, in those moments, speaks volumes. It says, "I don't need to convince you of my worth. I don't need to stay and prove to you that I matter. If you can't see it on your own, nothing I say will change that." You see, when someone is used to you being available, emotionally, mentally, even physically, they grow comfortable, sometimes even entitled. And when you finally stop showing up with that same energy, when you pull back and give nothing but silence, the absence echoes. It fills the space like thunder. Why? Because they were never prepared for your silence. They never thought you'd actually walk away. And here's what happens next. That silence forces them to sit with themselves. No distractions, no reassurance, no version of you trying to make things okay. Just them and the empty space where you used to be. And for the first time, they're confronted with what life feels like without your energy. It hits differently when the person they thought would always be there simply isn't. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about making someone chase you. It's about reclaiming your self-worth. Because when someone shows you that they don't value you, that they can't meet your needs, or that they take your presence for granted, your power is in stepping away, not in trying harder. We all have a moment where we realize, I'm not going to beg someone to love me the right way. And that realization is terrifying at first, because the silence, it feels uncomfortable. It feels like loss. But what you're actually doing is making room for peace, for clarity, and eventually, for people who meet you with the same energy. Walking away isn't about giving up on someone. It's about choosing yourself in a moment where continuing to invest would only be depleting. It's about saying, I love myself enough to leave the space that doesn't love me back. And believe me, when you leave from a place of calm strength, not revenge, not anger, but quiet self-respect, it sends a ripple through everything they thought they knew about you. Because they expected a reaction. They expected tears. They expected you to fight for them again. But you didn't. You chose stillness. You chose silence. And that's the loudest message of all. It says, this isn't working for me anymore. And I'm no longer afraid to walk away from something that hurts me. That's when things start to shift. That's when the calls come in. The messages. The sudden realization on their part that maybe, just maybe, they lost something real. But by that time, the question becomes, do you still want what you had to beg for before they saw its value? Sometimes they will beg. Sometimes they won't. That part doesn't matter. What matters is that you walked away for the right reason, not to get a reaction, but because you finally understood that your peace is not up for negotiation. And that's the point. You're not trying to punish them. You're not trying to prove anything. You're just done over-explaining yourself to someone who never really listened in the first place. The loudest move you'll ever make is walking away with your dignity intact, without slamming the door, without looking back, without needing closure that someone was never capable of giving you. So the next time you're tempted to talk it out one more time, ask yourself, do they really not know how I feel? Or are they just comfortable because I never leave? Because if it's the second, the real shift begins the moment you do. And when you leave, not to punish them, but to protect your peace, they'll hear it. They'll hear everything. If you're always the one filling the space, they never get to feel your absence. That's the truth most people miss. We think the more we show up, the more we prove how much we care, the more someone will realize our worth. But real value, true impact, is often felt in the silence that follows your absence. You don't always need to do more. Sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is to do nothing at all. People become comfortable with access. The more available you are, the more they assume you'll always be there. It's not even malicious, it's just human nature. We adapt, we normalize, we stop appreciating what we think we'll never lose. But the moment you step back, when you stop initiating, when you stop chasing, when you stop doing all the emotional heavy lifting, everything changes. They begin to feel the shift. The void you leave behind isn't just a lack of texts, calls, or affection. It's the absence of your energy, your presence, your essence. That void creates clarity. They start to notice what life feels like without you constantly showing up. And if there was real connection, if you did matter, they'll feel it deeply. But if you keep jumping in to fill that silence, if you rush to patch every crack, to smooth every awkward moment, they never get the chance to process the weight of losing you. You've got to give people the space to miss you. That's not about playing games. It's about emotional maturity. It's about letting go of the fear that says, if I'm not right here, they'll forget me. No, they'll remember you when you're not right there. Let the silence work for you, not in a passive-aggressive way, not as punishment, but as presence. Your silence should be a reflection of your standards, not your spite. If someone crosses a line, doesn't meet your energy, keeps taking without giving, your silence becomes your boundary. It says, I will not invest in something that refuses to invest in me. And in that quiet, they have a choice. Step up or step out. Most people are terrified of silence. That's why they over-text, over-explain, over-give. Because silence feels like rejection. It feels like losing control. But here's the shift. Silence isn't losing control. It's taking it back. It's saying, I'm done performing for someone who hasn't earned the show. You're no longer auditioning for their attention. You're observing who notices your absence. That's where the truth lives. You don't need to threaten to leave. You don't need to make speeches about how you deserve more. You don't need to justify why you're stepping back. Just step. Just go still and watch. Because anyone who truly values you will notice the difference. They'll hear the silence loud and clear. They'll start to feel the lack, not just of communication, but of connection. The energy you brought to the table, the comfort of your consistency, the way you made them feel seen, understood, safe. When all that's gone, people get real quiet, and then they get real reflective. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. The silence might stretch on longer than you expect. You might think, if they cared, they'd reach out by now. But sometimes, people don't even realize they've lost something until the noise dies down. Let it. Let the silence stretch. Let it do the work you've been trying to do with your words. Let it hold the mirror up. You've done enough talking. Now it's time for them to listen to the space you've left behind. You don't need to manipulate anyone into coming back. You don't need to twist their arm to realize your worth. If you mattered, they'll feel it. And if they don't, then your silence has revealed the answer you were too afraid to face. Either way, silence brings clarity. Either way, you win, because you get to see the truth. Not the version they give you when they're comfortable, but the version they show you when your energy is no longer in the room. Sometimes, you teach someone to value you, not by giving more, but by giving less. You don't beg to be seen. You don't plead to be chosen. You step back, you stay silent, and you let the echo of your absence speak louder than your presence ever could. Let them feel the void. When you respect yourself, others learn to do the same. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But most people forget it. The moment emotions take over, we chase, we explain, we try to convince someone why they should value us, why they should treat us better, why they should stay. And in that effort, in that performance, we unintentionally teach them that they can have our time, our energy, our love, without giving the same in return. That's the problem. Respect doesn't come from how much you give. It comes from how clearly you draw the line on what you won't accept. It comes from the standards you enforce, not the affection you pour out. And often the only way to truly communicate those standards is to step back, to get quiet, to stop over-explaining. And that's not easy, because silence feels like a void. And in that silence, you're left alone with your thoughts, your feelings, your fears. What if they forget about me? What if my silence is taken as indifference? What if they move on? But here's what you have to remember. If someone can truly move on from you because you enforced a boundary, they were never staying for the right reasons in the first place. You're not being silent because you're playing a game. You're not stepping back to manipulate. You're doing it to recenter yourself. You're doing it because continuing to engage would be you betraying your own self-worth. And when you stop betraying yourself, you stop allowing others to do it too. Think about how many times you've given someone chance after chance. They ignored your needs, dismissed your feelings, maybe even disrespected your time. But you stayed. You explained. You gave them more access. You taught them that they could keep taking, and that you'd still be there. That's not loyalty. That's a lesson you unintentionally gave them. That your love is unconditional, even in the absence of respect. But when you finally say, no more, and you mean it, not with words, but with your actions, that's when everything starts to shift. You don't need to slam the door. You don't need to make a scene. You just go quiet. You stop responding to breadcrumbs. You stop answering when they reach out with low effort. You stop showing up when they're not meeting you halfway. And something amazing happens in that silence. They notice, not because you're playing hard to get, but because your energy, your attention, was never cheap to begin with. They just didn't realize the value of it until it was gone. Silence creates space, and in that space, people feel, they reflect, they replay moments, and most importantly, they start to question themselves. Why did they pull away? Did I do something wrong? Did I push them too far? Why do I miss them now? Let them sit with those questions. That's not cruelty. That's maturity. That's how growth happens. Because sometimes people need the contrast to understand what they had. Sometimes they need your absence to understand your value. And here's what's even more important. Sometimes, you need that silence too. Not just for them to realize your worth, but for you to remember it. When you step back, you see clearly. You stop making excuses for their behavior. You stop overcompensating for their lack of effort.
You stop justifying why you're accepting less than you deserve, and you begin to feel something stronger than the fear of losing them. You begin to feel the power of returning to yourself. Because when you respect yourself, when you stop chasing, when you stop pleading, when you stop over-explaining, people are forced to face the truth. They either rise to meet you, or they lose access to you. And yes, it might take time. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they'll realize what they've done and beg for another chance. Or maybe they won't. But either way, you've already won. Because you chose you. You chose not to shrink yourself to keep someone else comfortable. You chose not to chase someone who was walking away. You chose not to compromise your standards for the illusion of connection. That is strength. That is attraction. That is power. Because the truth is, people mirror how you treat yourself. When you hold yourself in high regard, when you don't tolerate disrespect, when you walk away from confusion and half effort, you raise the bar for how others engage with you. You become someone who commands respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying it. So if you're in that place right now, confused, hurt, maybe even tempted to break your silence, just to get a reaction, don't let the silence do the talking. Let your absence speak for you.